A few of Miami's positional battles have been decided over the course of the weekend, but there's many more decisions left to come. We've graded the final performance of the preseason against Tampa Bay to help make that picture as clear as we can.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami, NFL Draft Lead over at the 33rd Team. You can find our shows here on the Locked On Network on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Today on the show, we are reacting to, I've had the chance to go through the coaches' film. We're not going to show any of the coaches' film here on the program, but we are going to react to the grades that were assigned through going through the coaches' film. If you're interested in any of the coaches' film, I do make some of that stuff available over at Touchdown Miami. But the main thing today, final round of preseason grades are done. And a lot of the names that have been good performers for you throughout the course of the preseason are in this game once again rearing their head at the top. But this conversation has to start with the decision that was already made. Skylar Thompson took QB2. And I know I did a 53 projection last week and had Mike White as the QB2. And all the credit in the world deserves to go to Skylar Thompson for going out and putting a competent, not even just a competent, a solid performance out on the field with the guys that Mike White struggled to look competent with in the first 2 weeks. I thought in each of those first 2 weeks, I had Skylar graded better in the first game and Mike graded better in the second game. And with it being so close, you kind of leaned into the experience that Mike White had with high-end production as an NFL quarterback. You know, both of those guys pretty light in the resume. This performance for me was like, yeah, guy plays like that, and he plays like that with the guys that are later in the game type of guys. It's hard to say no. Miami cutting Mike White over the weekend. They announced that transaction yesterday, meaning the Dolphins are currently sitting at 2 quarterbacks on the roster. So Skylar, a couple of things I thought he did well, some things that I would like to have seen done differently. There was an early A-gap pressure where Jody Fortson completely missed an opportunity to chip a linebacker coming through from the second level, and Skylar negotiated that play very well to slide, and takes a big slide step, forces this interior free runner that's an athlete, a linebacker, to miss, and then gets his eyes into the middle of the field and finds Hayden Rusi underneath for an easy completion for a chunk gain. The touchdown pass. The defense for Tampa presented cover 1. You get press up on the outside against a go. Skylar takes a snap. He looks to confirm. Can I take the go? It's 3rd and short against press coverage. Trust my guy to win. Turns out the corner turns and bails out. They're in cover 3. So Skylar works through that 2-man combination to one side of the field and then comes back, and they had ran stick, which is like a 5 to 8 yard vertical stem from the tight end. And then if you stop and turn and make yourself available for the quarterback, that's stick, but it's stick nod. So you sell the stick and then hit the seam and run it right up the seam. And in cover 3, there's a single high free safety that Skylar was able to look over here. The safety moves to his right because Skylar's looking to his right. He sees it's cover 3. He doesn't have the go route that he wants. And then he works back to his left, and he drills that ball in between the corner and the post safety to Hayden Rusi for a touchdown. That's really well done. That's post-snap confirmation of coverage, moving your eyes, working through progressions off of your alert to a seam against cover 3, which is one of the weaknesses in the coverage. even they ran kind of the drift route that Malik Washington had his head taken off of from Mike White. Skylar ran a similar throw and got it up and down much quicker. And I think that at its core, if you want to choose the quarterback that is more parallel to Tua with his strengths, I do think it is Skylar because he is a twitchier player. So Mike White goes through his footwork and he throws the drift and he gets to the top of the drop and he initiates the throw. But Malik Washington's 5 steps out of the break against a post safety who just runs downhill and drills him. Really nasty looking hit. We're fortunate Malik Washington avoided an injury on that play. But it was the feet and the time of the release from Mike that compounded that route into that look and got Malik in a big hit, in my opinion, where Skylar and Tua are a little bit faster with the feet. They can get to the top of the drop faster so they can get the ball up and down quicker before that drift runs into a post safety. Where I thought Skylar struggled was the 2-minute offense situation at the end of the game where they're down 10 points and he's looking for an explosive play to try to make something happen. He obviously throws an interception at the end of that, and that was a really bad read. But just about every decision that he made, Skylar ended up being the 3rd highest per snap graded offensive player in the contest, behind Jalen Wright and Malik Washington. Right behind Skylar Thompson was Patrick Paul, and then Kyrick McGowan at wide receiver did some really nice stuff as a blocker. And also caught a touchdown pass from Skylar in the red zone. If Skylar didn't run that 2-minute offense situation at the end of the game, he might have been the highest graded player. Everything that he tried to do to facilitate an explosive play was kind of the antithesis of what you want with making good decisions and finding completions and having a drive starter. He ends up throwing it right at a hook defender for an interception. That was kind of all she wrote. So you want to see that be better, but I understand if you're going to try to let it hang and maybe they said, hey, look, try to push the limits and find where your boundary is. Try to find a chunk play to make for us and get something started. But that feeling out process, I thought, was the negative that I did take away from Skylar Thompson. But Skylar finished 3rd amongst players with double-digit snaps. Anthony Schwartz did technically score ahead of him, but Anthony Schwartz did, indeed, it was announced, suffer a season-ending ligament injury in his leg. Looked like he put his foot in the ground off a reception and tried to plant and twist at the same time. And unfortunately, he is on IR and lost for the season for the Dolphins. Anthony Schwartz, not sure he would have made the team anyway, but still, you never want to see guys kind of suffer that fate, especially in the 3rd preseason game. So those were the things for Skylar Thompson in doing the offensive side of the ball, looking at execution, looking at why this was the decision that the team made beyond just, hey, he found some completions and had good production. You don't want to make those decisions based off of results. You want to be process-oriented, and I think that's what's the hardest thing about all this with all these players. You don't want to be too overreactionary to the thing that you see on the preseason TV because it's only a smaller percentage of the body of work that those players are giving on a day-by-day basis. But a performance like that, when it was as close as it was, where neither guy really took it, and then Skylar takes it at the end, I totally get why they made the decision that they did. Breaks the tie, effectively, if you will. A good performance like that. And the fact that Skylar didn't start the game, right? They did the thing where they let Mike White start and go with the guys that Skylar had worked with the previous 2 weeks, and it just did not click. Now, we have a lot more player performances to get to. Some members of the rookie class on both sides of the ball were very well represented in the grading from the film. We're getting into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. So stick with us. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking in LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong spots. Over 86% of small businesses report getting a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We got some ballers in this draft class. You already knew that based off of training camp reports and preseason games before this. But Jalen Wright came out and was, for what, the second time in as many games or that he played in the preseason. He didn't take any snaps against Washington, but he played against Atlanta, and he played a lot against Tampa Bay. And in 2 games that Jalen Wright played this preseason, he was the top-graded offensive player on a per-snap basis for my evaluation of film. Jalen Wright. And I think the most exciting thing about this contest was Jalen Wright. You know about the physicality. You know he's a bigger back. You know that he's still explosive. He obviously caught the ball a little bit in this game as well. He plays 29 snaps. It was some of the wide zone principle stuffs that I think excited me the most. There was a play that was called back for a penalty with a holding call on Jody Fortson. At Jalen Wright, they're running outside zone. It's to a 2 tight end surface with Hayden Rusi and Jody Fortson to the running strength. They're running to the outside hip of the tight end is the landmark for the running back. And you had both guards lose their fits, including a 3 technique in Chasen Hines, who for whatever reason, instead of getting into his landmark and running that guy off the ball, tried to hook him and got olayed. And now the 3 techniques is getting upfield penetration. And the linebacker that's over top of the tight ends has a late win where his head uncovers and he gets upfield and gets outside leverage as Jalen Wright is pressing the hole. And I think back to the principles of the wide zone scheme and how it's supposed to work. And offensive linemen are taught you got to take him as you find him. I thought you had Patrick Paul climbing to a linebacker on the second level. He didn't get a great fit on. You had Andrew Meyer trying to climb up to the second level. Had a okay opportunity, but didn't get fully fit on the Mike linebacker. And then you had the tight end uncover late, and the play side guard loses and gets swum over, so now you have upfield penetration. Like there's a lot of not ideal things happening to the play side on outside zone. It would have been very easy. Jalen Wright comes out of the mesh point and says, okay, I think that there's a soft corner. There's a defensive back playing off. We got a double team with the tight ends on that linebacker, but it's soft edge. I'm going to go outside. But he goes with cadence. And then there's late uncover by the linebacker over the tight end. And he doesn't cut too early, because if he cuts too early, the penetrating 3 technique or the Mike linebacker that's over the top of Andrew Meyer can redirect and get downhill and uncover. But instead, Jalen Wright patiently presses the gap and then does a dynamic jump cut to cut back up into the C gap. And because he didn't cut too early, or he didn't panic, or he didn't just put his blinders on and said, I'm going outside because I see it's soft angle as I get the ball, and he patiently read it out, he was able to jump cut into the C gap, take contact from a defender who was still engaged with a blocker, so he couldn't wrap him up, and he pinballs off of it, and then he goes outside after yards after contact, and he gets up the sideline for like 15 yards. And it came back because of a hold, but the unfortunate thing was the hold really didn't impact the play. But it's that understanding of how the plays are supposed to work. You're going to get muddy fits. You're not going to have guys that are whitewashing people off the ball every play. You're not going to have guys that are latching on and sustaining blocks and running guys out of bounds. You get it sometimes that it's super sexy and it's super fun to watch on tape, to watch Patrick Paul escort a linebacker 5 yards out of bounds. but it doesn't happen every play. So for you to do your part, and this is kind of where there's an inherent value, I think, in this scheme for running backs. That's a little bit more value than running backs and how they're treated across the league. There's a greater weight of responsibility for the backs in this scheme to make the offensive lineman right by not just making good vision cuts off of the blocks, but having tempo and patience with it to make sure that the backside pursuit and wash doesn't encapture you too early either. That kind of stuff for Jalen Wright, that's chef's kiss right there. That's what that is. Defensively, you'll be stunned to find out that Muhammad Kamara scored well again. He was one of my top-rated defensive players last week as well. And the contrast between him and Chop, I think, was on full display again in this game, where Chop, particularly early, I thought really struggled against the run. Within the first 8 plays on the opening possession, I had him down for 4 negative plays against the run, where he's not able to get off the blocks, or he's giving up way too much ground and still engaged and can't disengage off the block, or he's a little too nosy in the way that he shouldn't be, and he's giving up some gap integrity and leaving some guys out to dry. But that's what Chop was on tape at Penn State. It's not a surprise. I think he's profiling exactly as what his player profile said that he would be based on what his film showed you at Penn State. And what the growth is really going to determine the success of the pick, because in pass rush situations, yeah, I mean, he is full board. And I know Brian Baldinger spotlighted it, but they ran a perimeter screen to his side, and he had the ability to recognize early, turn back, retrace, get back outside, and make a tackle to force a 4th down for Tampa Bay's offense on a perimeter screen, which the guys on the perimeter didn't really have good angles or good opportunities to stop the play. It might have popped for a touchdown. Chop Robinson stops it, and he's rushing the passer and then turns and retraces and gets back outside. The dynamic speed, flexibility, change of direction skills, explosiveness, all that for Chop, it's very apparent. But Muhammad Kamara is the one that when you try to block him with the tight end and seal off and you're going to run between the tackles, Muhammad Kamara is going to put his face on the outside number of the chest of the tight end, and he's going to railroad that dude down inside, and he's going to wash it down and squeeze gaps and give his linebackers an opportunity, like Curtis Bolton did several times off of him, to take a gap exchange and say, okay, he's taking him for a ride down to the SmackDown Hotel. I'm going to exchange gaps with him and get outside, and then I'm square and free and unoccupied to make a play. The pass rush prowess for Muhammad is not as prominent. He's not as explosive. He's not as long. He's not as fluid. But both of these guys have ways in which they can contribute. And I think the good news for Chop Robinson, as I graded it out, I thought his play stabilized. I thought after the rough start, he had enough positive plays throughout the course of the game. I had him as a net neutral player. Right? He had as many positive contributions as he did negative contributions. But against Tampa Bay's starting defense, and you're in 4-man front the whole time, and they're going to try to attack you and get downhill, they really got after Miami's back up front in a big way. But those rookies, I thought, popped quite a bit. I want to take this to the bubble next. Take a look at some players who you had high hopes for. You had some anticipation about what they could maybe do with the opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about some of those players who maybe left something out there and potentially maybe played themselves off the roster. There's a handful of players that I thought played that poorly. We're going to get into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you stick with us. You've heard us talk a ton about FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, but right now we have a little something different for you for the start of football season. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account on a current form of payment, which you can cancel at any time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Guys on the bubble. Some played well, some did not. I thought Lester Cotton played well. I am being converted into a Lester Cotton believer. They had a perimeter screen, which he's 15 yards upfield, knocking a safety over. I thought he played under control. I thought he saw it pretty well. I thought his execution of wide zone techniques and providing kickstand and getting up to the second level, like it's been real clean all season. And I'll say this about Lester Cotton. Lester Cotton and Jack Driscoll, who ended up scoring positive despite the rough start at center against Vita Vea. Obviously, that play went super viral, and it was a very poorly graded individual rep on 3rd and 1. But he ends up playing 58 snaps in this game, Jack Driscoll. He yielded a handful of snaps to Baron Matos, including when Ryan Hazen originally went down. It was Matos at first, and he lasted 3 plays, and they yanked him until the final possession of the game, and rightfully so. Matos is a big-time developmental player. A lot of intriguing tools, but not ready. So that Jack Driscoll ends up taking the majority of this game at right tackle, and I think Miami should feel fortunate that they were able to get through a game like that with a bunch of backups, and that's where you think about guys like Keon Smith and Sean Harlow that get hurt. It's a little sloppier when you're deeper into the roster, and that means more bodies on the ground, more bodies being thrown into the ground. Chop Robinson on one play, actually by Luke Godecki early in the game, got thrown into the ground and almost rolled up on the knee of Tampa's left guard, who had climbed up to the second level. So I think that is a little bit more pronounced in the preseason. And for Jack Driscoll to have to play almost 60 snaps in this game and get through it, I think Miami should feel fortunate. But he played pretty well at tackle. I don't think he's a very good starting tackle option. He's somebody who is physically capable of playing tackle. Go back and watch the Jets game last year. They gave him fits at right tackle when he had to come in for Lane Johnson. But against the caliber of players that Tampa had to roll out, I thought he was really solid and really under control. Lester Cotton and Jack Driscoll are the only 2 interior offensive linemen who played in all 3 preseason games, who graded positively in all 3 preseason games in my evaluation film. Lester Cotton and Jack Driscoll. What a time to be alive. And I never would have imagined I'd say that. But for Lester Cotton, that's a huge feather in your cap. I thought he's outplayed Robert Jones the past 2 weeks. And Robert Jones was the one who in training camp you're looking at saying, hey, it looks like the light bulb might have came on here a little bit. I might get a little excited about what that could look like. And maybe you still are. But I thought from an assignment and execution standpoint, Robert Jones got outdone by Lester Cotton the last 2 weeks. And Lester Cotton, he looks the part. I'm not saying he's definitive answer. I still want an upgradable player, and then whoever is the last guy on the pecking order for you as the team, I'd still move on from. But I know for a fact part of the school of thought of Butch Berry and company there in Miami is, these guys played a lot last year. There's some foundational stuff that maybe we can build upon. Lester Cotton's actually looking like it and playing like it. So that's an interesting one for me. Other guys on the bubble. Quentin Bell, I was pretty disappointed with. He didn't play a lot, but he did not have a lot of consistently competent reps. I thought he got pushed around a ton. Is a brief showing for him. I think that does speak well to his standing on the depth chart. But at the same time, if they have hard decisions to make, I wouldn't be fully married to Quentin Bell. I don't think he played himself off, but I don't think he did himself any favors for being a player who's perceived to be on the bubble. Somebody who I thought maybe did play themselves off was Jonathan Harris. I've felt he's been a pretty attractive length and traits and heavy hands, B-gap defender throughout this entire process. Tampa's interior line, especially the starters, they pushed him around quite a bit. And that was pretty alarming for me, as Harris has been a guy who in the past couple of weeks, has played deep into preseason games and looked the part. But he got out there against starters, and it was a totally different animal. He was one of the lowest graded players on a per snap basis that I had on the film. It was him, Quentin Bell, Ryan Hayes, Robert Jones, and Baron Matos were the guys I had on a per snap basis as the lowest performers in this contest against Tampa Bay. So that's not ideal, obviously. As I look across the rest of the group, I did think it was interesting that that Nick Needham got a little bit longer run at safety. It kind of did some things with pairings of guys in the DBs where it's Ethan Bonner's out there and he's playing with Storm Duck. And then Isaiah Johnson comes in and then Duck goes off and Ethan Bonner comes back into the game. It's like, oh, okay, it's pretty interesting. You've got some rotational stuff to see in different combinations of guys. And that included Maitre a few times playing deep safety looks and Nick Needham being the one that was kind of lower in the nickel area in the second half of the game. So them trying some different combinations out, I thought was very interesting as well. But full flowers to Muhammad Kamara, Jalen Wright, top performers. Also Malik Washington, Skylar Thompson, Patrick Paul, Kyrick McGowan, the top 5 on offense. I had Muhammad Kamara, Curtis Bolton, Isaiah Mack, Isaiah Johnson, Brandon Peely. Top 5 performers on the defensive side of the ball as well. Fortunate that Peely seems to have avoided any serious injury with him kind of getting rolled up in the pile as well. So that's the official assessment of the tape. We did the post-game reaction show. We kind of stayed surface level. This was the deep dive. I've spent the last 2 days looking and grading all 11 players on offense and defense. The grades are available for you to peruse over on Substack at Touchdown Miami. They are free for the preseason for you guys to take a look at, see the charts. Also, the aggregate scoring for the entire preseason will be available over there as well. So you can check that out. I'm Kyle Krabs. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. The Dolphins announced 3 transactions yesterday. It was waiving Mike White and Jody Fortson and placing Anthony Schwartz on injured reserve. There is much work ahead in the next 36 hours. Technically 48. They're going to do the waiver wire stuff. So you better keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Monday. I'll talk to you all again soon.